We are live.
Welcome to Literary Pop. Sorry. Start again.
It's been a long time.
It
That
has
was
been
great.
it has been months actually.
I love this.
I hadn't rehearsed.
It's
Right,
like,
here we
which
go.
show am I on? I forgot.
Take two. Um, this is Literary Roadhouse. One short story once a week. I'm Gerald.
I'm Anais.
I'm Maya.
And I'm Remy.
And this week we've been reading Restoration by Joslin Williams. If you don't want to spoil the story, pause the podcast, read it, and come back and join us. The story this week is about the central character Kenton Pierce, who lives in a wood cabin in a forest. He reminisces about his wife, Jem, who died from cancer the year before, whose ashes is scattered in the forest with her dog who died the year before. On one of his rambles through the woods, Kenton discovers the bones of a dead human and has to call the cops. Whilst having romanticized thoughts about the female detective, he becomes conflicted with the story of the dead body in the woods and the death of his wife, with which he assisted.
So let's start at the top level. How did everybody feel about this story?
I liked it.
I loved it.
I liked it also.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, I liked it too, but I wouldn't say I loved it. So,
Okay, well, that's
something
good.
to dissect. Yeah.
Good.
That's good. For me, what I liked most about the story was the honest portrayal of grief, but also how well the reflection and the resonance throughout the story was. There were various elements that reflected on each other, and there was a depth to that added a richness that I really enjoyed. It's been a long time since we read a Carve story, and I think the last one we read I wasn't like totally stoked about, and this one brings us right back to our original I love Carve roots. So yeah, it was good for me.
Yeah. I liked it a lot too. I like the fact that it's a proper story. It's got like we talked about the iceberg. It's got the top level of a good narrative, interesting characters, and beautifully described environment. But it has the depth to the conflicts and the inner feelings which really made me think.
Mm-hmm. So,
Rami, what was it?
Go ahead, Rami.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, just to add to what Gerald was saying with the descriptive language, I know Maya eventually got to this, but I might as well point it out now. This is the type of rich, vivid description that I felt was missing with one of our previous stories with Stray Dogs. Just very artistically portrayed language, scenery, and visuals using the language. So I found myself highlighting several sentences that did this, and I thought it was very well done.
Yeah, I was going to make a similar comment about the imagery. I thought the imagery was very rich. I especially like the image of the sapling roots around sort of like the soft, fresh soil, cocooning the corpse that came up a few times. I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just very beautiful.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit about the pacing of the story? Because one of the things that I found interesting was how late into the story the body is discovered. As I was reading it for a while, I right before we discovered the body, like literally right before the thought went through my head was, oh no, is this going to be another one of those slice of life stories where nothing actually happens? And then all of a sudden the body is discovered. And what I appreciate about that was it showed a lot of control from the writer of the reader's emotions, because literally it was just at that moment when the body was discovered, and it was a very powerful moment because I wasn't expecting it at that time.
Yeah, and I think the writer adds in enough detail to provide interest without overloading you. So and it seems to be sort of dropped in almost at random, but it sort of keeps bringing you back to the main characters and his wife Jem. So she mentions when they first met, when she was standing by the side of a broken down bike, but that comes late on too, later than you would expect. So it's you're sort of into the story, and then these little nuggets of information are just sort of dropped in and enriches it.
Definitely. Wow, Anais and Rami are either really quiet or we've got a major delay.
I didn't say anything.
I know. That was the
Okay.
I
point.
think Anais is frozen.
So there's no delay.
I'm like, we're really quiet today.
Yeah.
She's a cyborg.
So
Hello, welcome to
why
your
did
cyborg
Anais love
relationship.
it? I want to hear her thoughts about
Yeah,
why.
that's,
I know. I want her to unfreeze so we can hear her thoughts.
Hi, am I
Oh,
unfrozen?
so,
Now
Oh,
you're
yeah.
unfrozen.
Yay.
There you are.
Cool.
wow.
So I missed the last bit of what Gerald was saying, but
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
I thought you were blankly staring into the screen this whole time.
no, I froze. I
I didn't
definitely froze.
realize she was frozen.
Yeah.
I was just talking about I was talking about the pacing, and I was talking about the dropping of little nuggets of information at sort of at times when you wouldn't expect them, and that just sort of brings you back and enriches the story. So I was just rambling on about that.
Yeah, I'd say probably the reason I don't love it might be a little bit, not because of the pacing, which I was surprised. Even though it was a very slow pace, I enjoyed it, probably because of the skill of the writer and the imagery. And she built tension really well. Like I felt kind of hooked. Not tension, like suspense. Like there was a little bit of like a hook that kept you there emotionally. But I felt like the whole plot with the body, and then that it's this bird lady who got murdered by her husband Daryl, I was like, that's a cool story, but it seems very loosely linked to the grieving story that is happening. And it almost feels like the author wanted to tell a grieving story, but knew you can't just have a guy who's grieving without an actual plot, and then kind of like added this in and was like, okay, and there's some resonance and some parallels here, sure. But it almost felt a little bit like, I mean, maybe this is me being a little cynical or jaded, because in our current culture, finding a dead body as like the starting point of a plot is used quite a bit. So I was like, how is this gonna, in fact, when the police showed up and they do the T to block off like any like escape, I immediately started thinking like, oh, is this foreshadowing that the guy like thinks his wife like died and then he scattered the ashes, but really she was just suffering so much and in so much pain that he like did like an assisted suicide thing and told nobody. Yeah, like I thought it was gonna be that, like, and that body is actually Jem, not somebody else, and blah blah blah. Especially because like he sees the tree and he's like, oh yeah, maybe somebody planted this here to hide a body. You wouldn't look under a tree. And I'm just like, God, you figured that out way too quick. So, yeah. And I'm not disappointed that it wasn't that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying when all of a sudden you bring in this strong plot element, I'm starting to look for the link. Like, how does this relate back to the Jem thing, And when it doesn't have a very clear link other than he's here and it reminds him of the death of his wife to some extent, and a little bit of guilt that he has, like, did I give her too much morphine at the end, this and that, blah, blah, blah. That parallel, I was looking for a stronger link that wasn't there, I think.
Yeah, for me, I felt like the link was very strong. I felt like, here's a man who did, why now? Of all times, here's a man that killed his wife because she's dying of cancer and she's in pain. And here's this other body who was killed by her husband, and her husband killed her out of not love. But both of them had their lives disrupted in this way. Both of them, as he's talking about the head going down the river, I forget the exact phrase, but there's an allusion to the fact that, he recognizes the trauma of having everything in your life, like, upturned like that. And I felt like having this body appear allowed him to begin to heal from losing his wife. So when the body appears, that's when he meets Carol. That's probably, he fantasizes about her briefly. You can tell that He hasn't really been fantasizing about other women. He's starting to work through some of these emotions. You know, he's allowing himself to start to feel human a little bit. When Carol invites him to dinner, he turns her down, but you know by that point that he's going to go out and make friends and that he's going to be okay, and that by seeing this body and by being forced to interact with these people, it's giving him a chance to heal. And so for me, I felt like that connection was really strong. But at the same time, I can see how in traditional modern stories, you see a dead body, instantly your brain goes, SVU. And you're
or even like a true detective thing.
You know, and the story doesn't do that. And it breaks that expectation both by having the body introduced so late and by not having the body be the main focus of the story, which for me was something I appreciated.
Yeah, thankfully I don't watch Law and Order, so I didn't make that connection, but I do feel that the dead body fit in nicely with the story because, like you mentioned, Maya, it introduces the character of Carol. And I think really having the police there and stuff, it wasn't, I mean, it could have raised suspense with some people, and I'm sure it did, but I mean, as he was walking, I knew nothing was going to happen because the narrator, or the main character, was kind of joking about how he could try to run away and things like that. So I didn't think anything was going to happen. But I feel like the whole point of having the police there was really all about bringing Carol into the story and having that dynamic.
That's funny because you say when he's joking about running away, you see that it's like just jokes that he's running away. And for me, it's like there's something like, why is he even? How often when you're with cops do you think to yourself like, I could outrun these bitches right now?
But you know what? That's not how he thought of it. Where's that line? Because the way he thought of it was like
it was funny. Like he is joking.
Like, I want to tease these young upstart cops. It wasn't like I'm going to run away because they're going to catch me and I'm going to outrun them because I'm
No. He was teasing, but I'm saying like when all of a sudden I'm trying to make the connection and I'm thinking like he's repressed the memory of how Jem really died. You know, like since I was already on that train of thought, I was like, someone's practicing it. I'll just silence.
Just keep going. It's not going to stop. I live in an art house. I'm sorry. I let the guy with the saw know I was recording, but evidently I need to put a note on the piano that says recording for the next hour.
Well, anyway, so because I was already like strongly trying to look for a connection, and I thought this guy has repressed the truth about how his wife died, I was thinking like these jokes are coming up because they're like bubbling up from the repressed subconscious of what really happened. Like I thought it was foreshadowing again. And I think maybe that's a little bit what happened. Like, I'm not disappointed in what actually happened. That seems very normal, very real, common to me. Like, that worked well. But there's a part of me that was, like, wanting so badly to link the two plot threads together that when they didn't, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's a natural instinct, especially because that's how we're trained to listen to literature, you know. Annie's, when I posted on Facebook about them translating those Egyptian stories and they're going to start publishing them, my first thought was I want to have one on the show, not because I want to see whether they were any good, but because I want to see how old some of these short story constructions are, these expectations we have. You know, when you see the gun, it has to be used. If you see a body, it has to be connected. These types of things. And it seems very natural that when you're confronted with these things, you instantly try to make those connections. And I do think it's inherently human.
Piano break.
I might keep that in the final edit. I might just keep the piano playing.
Just keep it. Just
piano break.
There's nothing we can do about it, and if we try to take it out, we're going to sound worse. And it is piano, and it's not copyrighted. He's a composer, so we're not going to get in trouble with YouTube. So just leave it.
Wow.
Hey, this is where your brain goes when you're a podcaster and a YouTuber. You're like, is it copyright? Okay, it's cool.
Wow. Very good.
Okay, can we talk a little bit about the language? Because there were so many points in the story that I was like, I wish I wasn't reading it on my phone, because I want to highlight all the words. Just all the words. Just highlight them all. just little things, like when he mentions that the people in the hospice taught him how to give the morphine so that the weight of it would be on him. And I can't look up the exact phrasing of it because I read it on my freaking phone. But the way it was said was so plain, but also very poetic. There's a lot of poetics in the story. And not like floofy, just annoying fates and furies, tick off half your reader type of poetics, but really just beautifully written sentences.
Yeah, yeah. It was an easy read. The language and the narrative, the language didn't get in the way of the story. At no point did the reading of it hesitate when a strange word cropped up or some strange analogy was used. It all just flowed really, really well.
Yeah. So I thought it was kind of very well controlled, an author who knew what she was doing. I like the imagery she painted. I like the way that she would phrase certain things, the poetics. And yet the overall tone of it, I know I've complained about this before, but it's that kind of very in vogue right now, kind of MFA, it's like confessional essayist tone that I think it's not that it's bad and it's not that you can't understand
You
it,
just
but I
get
think
tired of it?
I'm like overdosing on the tone. So it's like not Anne Joslin Williams' fault. This is like a greater cultural trend that I am over already, you know? So it's just more like a personal take on it, not really a criticism of the quality of the work.
You know, it's funny you say that because literally right before you were talking, I was like, I had a thought that I wanted to talk about the tone because this writer is a teacher in an MFA program. But while we talk about MFA tone, I found that the way she uses MFA tone did not bother me the way that I frequently see it employed.
Mm-hmm.
So what is MFA tone?
How would you explain it, Annie?
It's if I were speaking, it's sort of this slow pause tone where
it's NPR voice
is over.
On paper.
It's the NPR voice. Yes, it's NPR voice, and it's like yes, it's NPR voice, and it's like you're just saying the things, but the thing that we're saying is pregnant with overwrought.
It's NPR voice. I never made that connection.
It's like people reading poetry when they talk like this and pause.
And all they said was the sun rose, and you know that beneath the sun rising is.
Why is it that we all get that tone when we read poetry, by the way? Because I understand, like, we all have the pauses, the pregnant pauses, but there's a tone, there's a sing-songiness, and I do it too, and I make a point to not do it, and I hear it. I'm like, is this just, I'm picturing cavemen that are the campfire.
Buffalo jumps. Like, yeah, like, okay. Yeah.
Very good.
But I feel like I need to clarify, like, this isn't a legitimate criticism of the prose. This is just me being like, like me when I hate New England countryside descriptions.
Yeah.
It's just me.
It's freaking wonderful is what it is, and that's why we love you, Annie. Oh, man. So was there anything else about this story that really stood out for you guys?
There was one subtle thing that I think was a symbol, but it was so subtle because he says early in the story that Jem died last August, and then a little later there was a windstorm last fall. That's right after Jem died. That's like very tight on the heels of that. And then the windstorm uproots everything, reveals this dead body, and sort of mangles the canopy and the treetops. And I'm like, this windstorm as a symbol for the impact that death had on his life. But it's not like normally when you want to make that symbol clear, you would have that line come right after the revelation of her death. And this author spaced it out by several paragraphs, which I thought was really interesting. And she didn't explicitly say the windstorm that happened after Jem died. It just says last fall. So you have to make that connection yourself.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because now it's my turn to come up with my ulterior idea about the story. And unlike you, because I wasn't raised by your mother, my alternative version of the story invokes ghosts and spirits. And so in my alternative voice in the story, Jem is why the gross rose up. and she was alerting him to the body to help her husband heal, and that's why everything happened
totally.
after 12, and that's why she appears at the end of the story as a way of saying, okay, you're going to be fine, and so yeah, that's how I kind of took all that symbolism. It was like, she's looking out for her husband even beyond the grave.
Which is another type of trope, I guess. Helping people who are alive solve some mystery or something.
Yeah.
But it was subtly done. I think it was very, very subtle. Did anybody get was there a meaning for the grouse other than 13 was her favorite number?
Well, for me, the grouse ties into what Maya was just saying of the whole, if you see the 13 grouse as being linked to her, it's her clearing, it's her number, then she's pointing him towards the body. So I also had that reading of it, devoid from the storm, where I feel like the storm was more about how his life got uprooted by this death personally. But like you said, it's very subtle.
I also think that Carol's statement about how the grouse sounds when they're beating their wings sounds like a motorcycle, and he was saying that's not exactly how he would have said it because it was something that was more felt than heard. I think that is actually like a really poignant thing in the story. It's like the beating of, something to come. And when they came up, it was like one and then two more, and it was different, and it was loud, and it was a little off-putting. But also, this was an area where the other man who killed his wife, he knew this area because he both fished there, but also because he hunted birds there. So the grouse not only showed the body, but without the grouse, the man wouldn't have known to put the body in his path.
Yeah. And also there was that parallel with drumming and thrumming where he fantasizes about Jem coming back to life, and he confirms by listening to her heartbeat. And then if you see the grouse drumming or the thrumming of their wings, similar as a representation of like Jem, like beyond the grave, call out, like it's over here, the body. If you see it that way, then there's that parallel as well with that same sound.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was really well done because I think that's really easy to overdo. It's so easy to be heavy-handed on stuff like that. I know I frequently am, and when I read stuff like the book we're currently reading, sometimes I'm like, there's just certain things that are really easy to get overhanded with, and I feel like this was done well. She tread a really fine line.
Yeah. And the supernatural element of Jem sort of discovering this body beyond the grave, if you are somebody who wants to discard that, you can, and the story is no worse off for it.
Yep.
Well, it sounds like we're starting to wind down. Surprisingly, I figured this was going to be like a meaty discussion where I wouldn't be able to get everyone to shut up, but instead everyone's like, we're all feeling sad about a dead body.
Yeah.
Are we ready to rate this, or was there anything else you guys wanted to discuss?
I'm good to rate.
We need to pick more stories where half of us hate the story.
Yeah.
I'm good to rate. I'm rating it a 6, and I'm not even hesitating.
Wow.
It's complete non-hesitated 6.
Wow. I'll go 5.5. Yeah, a strong 5.5, but not quite a 6.
Okay.
I'm also gonna go with 5.5. I liked the way the story treated a sad subject without having the reader feel depressed or sad or down as well. And the reason I'm docking it this 0.5 point, and this is one of my pet peeves, is because in the course of the story, in one of the lines, she incorrectly uses the phrase "begging the question," because she uses it, as do most people when they use it to say like it raises the question, but the original meaning is different.
Wow.
I love you, Rami.
So hard.
Can I say that? I just adore you on every level. I often look at the podcast. And I think, what would we do without Rami?
No, I'm
it's
laughing
wonderful.
at myself
We don't
for saying
misuse it
this,
in
but
literature because people misuse it in real life. If they used it correctly in literature, people would read it in real life and be confused. But it's just really funny that you would note that because I'm so used to hearing it misused, it doesn't even hit my radar anymore. And that's
well,
one
the
of the
thing,
reasons why
so
I
usage
appreciate you.
to a large extent, usage determines meaning as well. So because so many people have used it that way, now it's just become
Exactly.
the norm.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm giving it a 5. I think I liked it, but I probably liked it the least of all of us because yeah, there was that kind of shoehorning with the plot a little bit, even with the grouse thing that comes and kind of saves that. But it was really good imagery, and I'm overdosed on MFA tone. So hey, 5.
Okay. So before I tell you guys the story that I'm putting into the pot, I need to talk directly to Rami because Rami, I was talking to my roommate and we were talking about Charles Bukowski, and I've never read Charles Bukowski, and I thought we need to read some Charles Bukowski on this podcast, and I went looking for stories, and I want you to know that the first story that I really, really wanted to read, I chose not to submit it because I knew that Rami might quit the show. So, and I love you, Rami. You're welcome.
Okay.
I just figured that reading a story about a guy trying to have sex with a mannequin, probably not the story for the podcast. So I am submitting all the assholes in the world and mine by Charles Bukowski. So if this story goes wrong, I want you to know I tried, dude. It's Charles Bukowski. All I can do is get rid of mannequins.
Wow. Very good. And Rami, what's your story for next week?
I'm sticking to the one I submitted last week. It's Letting Go by David Sedaris.
Okay, and I'm submitting Mastiff by Joyce Carol Oates.
Very good. Okay, so we're now going to play the game. It's like the summary. It's a very short game, and it's all about grouse.
Oh,
You'll be
God.
pleased to hear. so it's
Only
it's
you, Gerald. I know nothing about grouse. I know it's a bird and it has wings.
well, you will after the quiz.
None of
so
us
that's
do.
yeah. No, right. Okay, so it's all of the questions are whoever gets nearest, so you don't have to feel pressurized.
It's very kind of you.
There's no right or wrong answer. Well, there is, but anyway. Okay. Let's start off. So we'll go Anais, Maya, and Rami, because that's the way they are on my screen. Okay. First of all, how many different species of grouse are there? Anais.
I just gotta say a number.
Yeah?
10.
Okay.
60.
Maya?
60.
Yeah.
100.
And Anais is closer because there's only 18.
Woo.
Oh, wow. That's not very many.
Score 1 for Anais. Okay, now we go on to this tasteful subject of hunting, which is not good. In Great Britain, the grouse hunting season, the grouse shooting season, all starts on the same date every year. And it's.
I have to start to interrupt. Maya's bobbing her head, but she put herself on silent, so people who watch the YouTube video might think she's crazy. She's dancing to the thing.
Look at her head.
It's great music. I can't help it.
Oh, you can.
It's a great
I
podcast.
just had to make that comment. Just looked odd.
I got my phone ringing and the piano in the background. It's like amateur week, isn't it? Okay, so grouse shooting season starts on the glorious 12th, which is the 12th of a certain month. But which month is it, Anais?
June.
April.
Okay.
September.
Ram is closest because it is August the 12th, of course. Obviously.
Of course.
Why wouldn't anyone know that?
Naturally.
Okay. I'll just do 2 more questions. When does grouse shooting season end in Northern Ireland? You see, this is a trick question. When does it finish in Northern Ireland?
What are you
Different
looking
dates.
for? The month or what?
The dates. The dates. So,
Out of the 365 days in the year?
well, you've got a sort of clue because it starts on August the 12th. So
Okay.
it's presumably finishes sometime after that. Sometime. Anais, give me a date, as it were.
September 20th.
Okay.
November
Mom's birthday.
12th.
November
12th.
12th. Okay. And Remy?
December 1st.
Gotta do the math. That means
He's
it's
like,
in November.
damn.
No, because I thought it was going to be Maya, but it's Rami because it's November the 30th. When it finishes
Ooh.
in December the 10th in England, Wales, and Scotland, of course. Right, final question.
Bukowski.
Oh, sorry, Maya. Do it next time. Final question. Thank God. How many grouse are shot in Great Britain each year? Anais.
1,000.
Okay.
That's gonna be my guess. What the hell?
Maya.
700.
Rami.
1,500.
Rami is closest, but is still a mile away. 250,000 grouse are
What?
shot each
I didn't think you
year.
guys had that many guns.
I didn't think that was that popular.
Yeah,
I didn't think it was popular.
it's a big thing, particularly in Scotland
I
and the
thought you guys like
States.
mostly hunted foxes.
No, it's grouse. In season, it's grouse in Scotland. Okay, so Rami's won by 3-1 to 0. What are we reading next week?
It's called Letting Go by David Sedaris.
Hurrah.
By the way,
But
I want to mention, I really like, for people who have never read online on Carve Magazine, I like the progress bar that they have on top when you scroll through the story.
Yeah.
It really motivates me to keep going.
They gamified your reading, Remy. That's so awesome.
Wait, what? Say that again.
They've gamified your reading. That's like a really common thing for programmers to do in video games to keep people to keep wanting to do it.
It worked.
It took me ages to see it because I thought, why isn't there a progress bar on this? And it took me a while to find it. So there you go.
I'm gonna gamify the call to action at the end. What up, guys? Put a little progress bar as listeners take off everything I tell them to do, such as bury an insightful comment in the fresh comment thread beneath this episode at literaryroadhouse.com. And if you're not the burying type but prefer to scatter your thoughts into the wind, leave reviews on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spreaker. That way, every time we go to the review sections, we can feel the warmth of your presence. We tried flushing some podcast grouse of our own, but only got 2 birds to share with you, the Literary Roadhouse Book Club and the Bradbury Challenge. Also, this story has inspired us to clear a picturesque field. Please help us cover our field clearing and podcast expenses at patreon.com/literaryroadhouse. Every bit helps. And as always, share this podcast with the sexy sheriff in your life. Until next time, read a good story.
Good story. Awesome as usual. Awesome as usual.
Everyone's got a sexy sheriff. It's known.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that was great.
I didn't mention this, but when they use the author used the expression flushing the grouse for like the next paragraph or something. I was thrown off because I had this image in my head that he flushed 13 grouse down the toilet for some reason.
Remy, please tell me you're still recording that. I'm pretty good at bonus content.
I'm recording any, so I got your back.
Bonus content.
Yeah, bonus content. Oh, best comment ever. Okie dokie, guys. I'm going to stop the recording unless anybody else has any awesome bonus content to say. 5, 4, 3, 2, forever hold your peace.